reading the Old Testament with Herod. There's all kinds of Herods running around all over the place, so you don't want to get confused with all these Herods. Okay, so let's start taking a look at today's message. There we go. Martha and Mary and their brother Lazarus. And as the story states, okay, I'll wait until everybody's ready, okay? Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured the perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. If you remember the story, Martha and Mary were together when Jesus came to visit at their house one time, and Mary was going crazy because Martha was going crazy because she was doing all the preparation, and Mary was sitting there talking to Jesus. So, and then Jesus rebuked her, told her, says, no, just chill out. What she's doing right. So this is the same Martha and Mary that you might have seen previously in the Old Testament. So the sister sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, the sickness will not end in death. Interesting. Okay? Because what we're talking about here is the physical death and a spiritual death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days, and then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. Jesus just got a message that Lazarus was sick. You would have thought that Jesus would have got up and took off to tend to Lazarus. But he doesn't. It's okay. Don't stress out. We'll get there. Okay? The dying is not important because your life is only a temporary thing. Your physical life is only temporary. Your body is just a shell that will disappear. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet you're going back. So, for Jesus to go to see Lazarus, Mary, and Martha, he has to risk his life. But this is no problem for Jesus. Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of daylight? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. 2 meanings. The light, the daytime. Dark, the nighttime. His other meaning of the light means the light, the light of walking with God, walking in the way, in goodness. If you're going to walk in darkness, you're walking in evil. Okay? Darkness and evil. And when Jesus talks about this, he talks about this all the time. Light, dark, good, bad, opposites. And often it's on 2 layers. So when you see them talking about light again, just like we talked about before with water, there's often 2 meanings. And after he said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going there to wake him up. Often in the Bible, you'll hear them talking about people falling asleep. It's not physically falling asleep, it's dying. But again, the reference is to sleeping, because when you sleep, you will, hopefully, wake up. Okay? The same thing. When you die, if you're a Christian, you will wake up. Okay, you will be resurrected. So the use of these words, asleep and light and dark, they have a double meaning, and it makes perfectly good sense. So here we have Jesus with Martha and Mary. His disciples replied, Lord, you got to love this. And this is something I want you to stress up with you guys. Don't feel bad. Don't feel stupid if you don't see it or if you don't get it the first time. This is what sometimes people start reading the Bible and go, oh man, I didn't see that. I didn't understand this. I'm never going to get... No, don't do that. Jesus wants us to walk with other Christians for this reason, so we can help each other. Up here, his disciples, these are the 12 guys that hung out with him all the time. If anybody in the world should understand what Jesus is talking about, it should be them. Okay, now watch. Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. There's two conversations going on here. The disciples are talking about physical sleeping, and Jesus is talking about something else, about a spiritual sleeping. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but the disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, guys, you missed what I was talking about. Lazarus is dead. You got it now? Okay? And for your sake, I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him. Okay? It was a good thing I wasn't there when he was sick, because people would expect me to heal him. I need you to, right here, I need you to believe. And sometimes you got to hit people in the head with a spiritual 2x4. And that's what the story of Lazarus is about here. Then Thomas, also known as Didymus, this is the guy, this is Doubting Thomas. This is the one who's going to show up later after Jesus has been risen. The one who goes, hey, I'm not going to believe that you've been risen from the dead until I put my fingers into your hand. Okay, Doubting Thomas. Okay, so here's Doubting Thomas. Said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. These guys just don't get it. Okay, so don't feel bad if you're not getting this 100%. We need to talk about this. Let me just go off the side from here. We've been doing, and we're going to talk about this with everybody shortly. We've been doing, Jim, do you want to just hold it up, the discipleship book? We've been doing this discipleship program one-on-one with people. I've got 3 people I'm working with right now. It's amazing, because what happens is you can sit down and you can talk to me, and I can talk to you, and we get a lot of these questions answered. Like one of the questions that we were talking about, how old is God? Interesting question, okay? One person I've been working with, we spent an hour and a half talking about how old is God. Yeah, but you see, the terrible too is that this is what happens. Those of us who have been Christians for a while, we have it in here, we have it in here. So somebody like Sherry says to me, how old is God? And I say, well, he's ageless, he's eternal. So basically what I'm saying is, okay, there's your answer, Sherry, don't ask anymore. But Sherry says, I don't get it. What? It's no good, regardless of what we're talking about, to have it here and here if you can't get it out here. Like, oh, I'm such a good Christian, but I'm just a good Christian all by myself. Like, why don't you just go live on top of a mountain? You need to be able to share your faith. So then when Sherry says to me, well, explain to me what eternal means, I can't sit there and go, well, like, kind of like you know. And it helps me to understand what I've got. Okay, so on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Dead body, 4 days. Now Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of the brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. At this time, the Jews understood that there would be a resurrection at the last day. Jesus again is trying to get two different versions going on here, because his resurrection is key to our understanding of what's going on in our faith. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Me. Not something in the future. I will give you resurrection and life. You're no longer dead. You're going to be alive. The one who, and again, believes in me will live. It's not going to be a worm-infested existence in the ground. You're going to live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Talking to Martha and Mary, do you believe this? But Jesus is also saying to you, do you believe this? If you're saying you're a Christian and you say, I don't know, we need to do some work on you. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who had been with Mary in the house, comforting, noticed how quickly she got up and went out, they followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. Where are we? Okay. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Physically, but more important, we're talking spiritually. Even Martha and Mary aren't quite getting this. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. And this is highlighted because this is in fact the shortest sentence in the entire Bible. That's the shortest sentence. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, look at how much he loved him. But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying? They're still looking at this simply. Jesus, you're the guy that goes around curing blindness. You're the one that goes around, curing leprosy. Could you not cure what was causing the problem for your friend? Yes, he could. But you're missing the whole point of what's going on here. Lazarus has to die to get the message across, just like Jesus has to die. This thing that goes on sometimes, people point at, the Romans killed my Savior. Oh, the Jews killed my Savior. He had to die. It was part of the grand plan. Okay? If all of a sudden there was some Hollywood ending and Harrison Ford came riding in, Indiana Jones, with his whip and saved Jesus from the cross, it ruins the whole story, believe it or not. The whole thing is messed up. He has to die. Jesus, once more moved, came to the tomb. What's this say here? Look at this. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Ding dong! Ring any bells? It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. A little bit later on, all of a sudden you go, oh, I've heard this before. Because this is the exact same thing with Jesus. Cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. If you get a chance to read the King James Version, read the King James Version. I love the King James Version for this part because they tell him he stinketh. I love that terminology. He stinketh. Okay. Sometimes you have to go to the Old English to really get a good sense of what's going on here. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? Believe, 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 believe. You've got the idea, the key word in this message? Believe me, that's the word. So they took away the stone, and then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. Another time that Jesus talks to God in a death scene, when Jesus is on the cross. This parallel is quite amazing. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. Jesus can sit there and say, Father, this is what I want to talk to you about, in his head. But he has to do this. But because people are so resistant to wanting to believe. You know, it's like, if you can prove to me that there's a God, I will believe. If not, I'm not going to. But it's interesting, people that do that kind of weird thing to you too, you say to them, okay, look, if I can prove that there's a God, will you commit your life to Jesus? No. Well, I'm not going to waste my time on you. They play these little head games. All right? If you believe, the belief will become no. We're going to talk about this some other time too, about that if you believe, and how to prove that God exists. Because sometimes we get into this thing where people say, if I can't touch it, and if I can't see it, it's not real. There's an easy way of getting around that. Very easy way of getting around it. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes. Whoop, wrong button. Jesus said, take off the grave clothes and let him go. There's a parallel here, but there's a very important difference. Lazarus comes out, wrapped in the linens. Jewish burial practices, they wrapped a person, sort of like a mummy. Okay, you all know what a mummy's like. They wrapped the person in linens. Lazarus comes out, sort of looking like a mummy. All right? Big difference, though, with Jesus is when Mary and eventually Paul and John come to the empty tomb, the shroud is laying there on the platform. No body. Because, and this is another reason why we know that Jesus was really resurrected. There was a theory running around at one time that said grave robbers stole his body. That is dumb as a stone. That's exactly, who would steal a dead body? Back then, there was no use for a dead body. In the late 1800s, when they were starting to learn about surgery and this type of thing, yeah, there were grave robbers, they needed bodies, but in Jesus' time, no. The most valuable thing in that tomb was the cloth. And yet it was left behind. And robbers didn't take it, they left the most valuable thing. So out comes Lazarus, and he takes off the grave clothes, and they tell him, away you go. The important thing is Lazarus is resurrected. Jesus is trying to show the average common person, this can be you too. You see, this is one of the things people sit there and say, oh, it's okay for you. You're the Messiah. It's okay. You're going to be born again. You're going to be resurrected because you're God. What about me? I'm just like, Joe Nothing. And that's what Jesus wants you to see. Lazarus is nobody special. Just like you and I are nobody special. But we too can have this privilege if we, what's the key word? Starts with B? Believe. All right, that's it. I love this group. They're pulling out and they're listening. Okay. If you believe. And we're actually going to talk about that in the fall. We're going to do a little bit of a series about what is a Christian. And it just doesn't mean solely, I believe in Jesus, I'm going to heaven. That's not the ticket. It's more than just believing, because the demons believe in Jesus. Going to find any demons in heaven? I hope not. Okay? So believing is a good start. But we're going to investigate this more and just get you to think about what it means to be a Christian. You can't, you've seen me do this. I sit there, stand here and go, I'm a zebra. Doesn't make me a zebra. Just like I'm a Christian. Really? And we're going to take a look at what it means to be a Christian. You can't just simply say it. All right, today's questions. What is the importance to you personally of the Lazarus story? 2, how important is the idea of resurrection to Christians? I don't know how much time you're going to have to talk about these, but this question is really important. There are some, watch where you go here, Pastor Dave. There are some Christian denominations that say, well, it's not important about the resurrection. It may have happened, it may not have. It's like having the atheist Christian minister. Look in the Bible, see what it says. And the last one, why does Mary, a woman in a male-dominated world, play such an important role in the Bible? Okay? We're going to do a whole series sometime about women in the Bible. Sometimes people think that they're women are the ones that stayed at home and made matzahs and cleaned the house and this type of thing. Not in Jesus' time. Jesus has got a different role for them.